Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I'm not going in depth with the first film here. If you're interested in the trivia or history of this film, go back and watch episode 1 first. Synopsis. An ancient creature is awakened by nuclear testing in the South Pacific Ocean. It soon comes ashore, wreaking havoc on Tokyo, Japan. Then it disappears back beneath the waves. Days later, Godzilla returns to Tokyo, but this time, the country is ready. They throw every arsenal at their disposal towards the creature, but nothing works. The military comes to the realization that the beast is immune to conventional weaponry, and thus invincible. Japan's fate falls in the hands of one Dr. Daisuke Serizawa, a scientist who has created a weapon called the Oxygen Destroyer, a weapon that is so powerful it can rival the atomic bomb. After a personal battle, Serizawa decides to unleash this weapon on Godzilla in Tokyo Bay. Godzilla dies by the weapon, and Serizawa commits suicide to prevent anyone else making any additional oxygen destroyers. Godzilla Raids Again. Godzilla Raids Again, or Godzilla's Counterattack as it is known in Japan, was released in theaters in 1955, but this was not as well received as the previous installment. This film is often considered by most as a rushed sequel. Every level of this movie, from the effects to the writing, is a downgrade from the 1954 Gojira, though both had around the same production time. Like Gojira, Counterattack would receive an American release, but would have a very troubled production, pushing it back 4 years to 1959, where it was redubbed Gigantus the Fire Monster. Godzilla's name was changed to trick American audiences into thinking they were seeing an original film, not a sequel. That's what they call false advertisement today. After the flop of this film, the Godzilla franchise would go on its very first hiatus, lasting 7 years. Raids Again is notable for many firsts in the Godzilla series. It is the first versus film matching Godzilla against his later comrade Anguirus. This film also introduced that problem with naming the monsters, where some monsters have translated names. Anguirus, for instance, has 4 different names across the movies. This is also the first film to have that American titling problem that a good majority of the Showa era has, where there are 2 or 3 English titles for each installment. This film has 3 titles: Godzilla's Counterattack in Japan, Gigantus the Fire Monster, the original American title, and then Godzilla Raids Again, the modern official Toho International title. Synopsis. After a plane goes missing, another pilot is sent to search for it. Soon he locates the missing plane and pilot on an island. Once landed on the ground, the 2 pilots experience an earthquake, which is soon revealed to be caused by 2 giant monsters fighting. After a few minutes, the 2 fighting kaiju fall into the sea. In shock, our 2 pilots return to base and report what they have seen. One monster is identified as another Godzilla, while the other is named Anguirus. The 2 monsters later come ashore in Osaka to fight, which obliterates the city. Godzilla kills Anguirus and retreats back to the ocean. Bent on once again destroying Godzilla, the Japanese military is tasked with locating the monster. They eventually find him on an icy island, where they bury him alive in an avalanche. King Kong vs. Godzilla. This film marked the return of Godzilla, and it really made the spark that would set off the Godzilla boom of the 60s. Considered to have some of the best effects in the Showa era, King Kong vs. Godzilla was not even originally a Godzilla film. The movie was once King Kong vs. Frankenstein, but after not being able to secure the rights to the Frankenstein monster, Toho decided to bring Big G out of cold storage. This change explains King Kong's strange electric powers, as those were meant for Frankenstein's monster. Synopsis. King Kong is captured on an island by a Japanese TV director, hoping to boost his program's popularity with the big gorilla. While being transported by boat, King Kong escapes. Not a reference to Toho's Kong sequel, King Kong Escapes. King Kong soon encounters Godzilla, who was shown breaking out of his icy prison earlier in the film. The two have an incredible brawl, which the world still remembers today for its memes. The battle rages to the famous Atami Castle, where Godzilla smacks it to rubble. Kong then tackles Godzilla off the cliff beside the castle, and they both plummet to the sea below. Only King Kong is seen to re-emerge. As he swims out to sea, the credits roll. Mothra vs. Godzilla. Also known as Godzilla vs. The Thing in America, this marks the point where Toho starts adding some of their more popular monsters into the Godzilla mythos. Mothra would later become one of the largest names in the franchise other than Big G himself. This film has one of my favorite Godzilla designs. The effects in this film are also pretty good for the time. I highly recommend it for new fans. Synopsis. When an egg is found that turns out to be Mothra's, a Japanese entrepreneur wants to make it into a tourist attraction. Godzilla appears from underground and tries to destroy the egg, but the adult Mothra swoops in to protect it. Battle ensues and Mothra dies, but the egg then hatches, revealing two Mothra larvae. The larvae work together, capturing Godzilla in a cocoon of silk. Godzilla falls into the ocean as the two larvae return home to Infant Island. Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. This time the title was surprisingly kept the same through the years in America, but still differs from Japan, but the title is Three Giant Monsters, Greatest Battle for Earth. This is the first appearance of both King Ghidorah and Rodan in the Godzilla franchise. In this film, Godzilla also makes his conversion from antagonist force of nature to hero and protector of Earth. And if you couldn't tell from what I just said, this movie is what heavily inspired the new Godzilla King of the Monsters for 2019. Synopsis. A meteor falls to Earth that eventually turns out to be Ghidorah, the three-headed golden monstrosity. Mothra recruits Godzilla and Rodan to defend the planet against this invading threat. After a 3-on-1 fight, Ghidorah retreats back to space, and Earth is saved. Earth 1, Aliens 0. Look forward to seeing the development of this score. Invasion of Astro Monster. Also known as Godzilla vs. Monster Zero in America, this film is the marker of where the Showa era began its long decline in quality, where Godzilla was marketed more towards young audiences. Astro Monster is also notable for introducing the Exilians, a reoccurring alien race that appears in later films and video games. There is some reused footage in the final battle of this film that comes from Ghidorah the three-headed monster. Reused footage became a staple of the Showa series from this point on, as Toho cut down cost and time of production. Oh, and before I move on, I can't forget it gave us that wonderful victory dance that's so important. Synopsis. Two astronauts from Earth travel to Planet X, where they discover aliens who ask to borrow two monsters, Godzilla and Rodan, to defend their society against Ghidorah. Cause that's what you do whenever you meet strangers asked to borrow their kaiju. Back on Earth, the nations of the world agree to help. The Exilians come to Earth in their cheesy flying saucers and capture Godzilla and Rodan, which should really tip everyone off that the aliens are lying, because why could they not just capture Ghidorah and drop him off at some intergalactic highway somewhere? But you know what? Just roll with it. Once back on Planet X, there is a monster fight. The aliens then go full antagonist, saying, "Ha ha ha ha! We will use the blah blah technology to control your monsters and send them back to wreak havoc on your precious Earth." That's not an exact quote, but you get my point. The monsters are then sent back to Earth, but then humanity uses science to break the mind control. The monsters are briefly put into a paralyzed state, but then soon get up. Godzilla and Rodan proceed to double team Ghidorah. Next to a cliffside, all three monsters tumble into the sea. Both Ghidorah and the aliens are defeated, and Earth is once again saved. Earth 2, Aliens 0. Ebra, Horror of the Deep. The alternate title for this film is Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. This movie introduced the first ever lobster kaiju Ebra, and the first ever eagle kaiju, the giant condor. Though some of the previous films had strange and weird concepts, this one is the first to reach a whole new plane of existence. I will not be doing this for every strange film in the series because there are a lot in this time period, but this is the first good example. Also, you don't hear people talk about this one as much, so this film will have an extended synopsis. We start with a young man named Ryota, in search of his missing brother, who steals a boat from a man pretending to be the owner. It turns out later he was a bank robber who was just hiding on the boat. There are also 2 other men that work at the docks, but they're not really that important. All these people are sleeping on the boat because the owner said they could. Ryota in the middle of the night goes full Grand Theft Auto on the boat, dragging all these other people into the hunt for his brother. A giant lobster claw sinks the boat, and our wacky cast is washed ashore on a random island. It is soon discovered that the island is a hideout for our generic anime bad boy group named the Red Bamboo. This terrorist group is enslaving Mothra worshippers from Infant Island to work at their nuclear weapons plant. Because, let's just take these native people with no education and allow them to handle the production of radioactive material and highly explosive content. What could possibly go wrong? A native girl escapes and joins up with our castaways. They all go looking for a place to sleep for the night. They soon find a cave, but it's revealed Godzilla has already taken up residence inside. Our cast say, "Hey, we don't want to sleep with a radioactive lizard." So they go to break into Team Rocket's base. One of the men that don't matter gets captured by the Red Bamboo, while everyone else escapes back to the cave Godzilla was in. Ryota, during the escape, gets his leg caught on a string tied to a balloon, which carries him off the island over to Infant Island. But we'll get back to that later. Meanwhile, the rest back at the cave decide to use the big guns and wake up Godzilla. They do this by using a random sword found earlier in the film as a lightning rod.
See? We have to use our brains, understand?
A thunderstorm just so happens to begin, and lightning strikes the sword, awakening Godzilla. Godzilla, mad because he got woke up from nap time, proceeds to fuck up the entire island. This includes Red Lobster, aka Ebra, a giant eagle, and Bad Boy Base. But it turns out that Bad Boy Base has a self-destruct mechanism, and it begins a countdown. Everyone on the island begins their escape. The rest of Bamboo is destroyed by Ebra while they were escaping on a boat, while Team Castaway and the enslaved Infant Islanders begin creating a giant net. Godzilla goes to fight the sea monster one more time, where it is quickly defeated. Mothra is awoken on Infant Island to rescue the others, still stranded upon the island. Godzilla sees Mothra approaching and goes in for an attack, but is knocked over by her wing. The remaining people gather in the net they made, and Mothra picks them up, flying out to sea. Godzilla jumps off the island into the ocean as it explodes in glorious Michael Bay fashion. The credits roll as Mothra returns to Infant Island. Wow. Just wow, that movie is a trip, let me tell you. Son of Godzilla. This film introduces a lot of new monsters. Kamacuras the giant mantis, Kumonga the giant spider, and Manila, Godzilla's son, who is possibly the ugliest thing in the Godzilla franchise. Even Godzilla himself looks bad in this movie though. This film has a silly, childish tone, but with some decent enough monster battles thrown in. This is definitely not one of the good films. I would only recommend this if you are in a really cheesy mood. Synopsis. Godzilla has a son that all the other monsters hate, so Godzilla has to protect him. As the film goes on, Manila grows and learns how to fight to protect himself. That's all the important stuff really, so we're just gonna move on. Hey guys, thanks for watching Godzilla Full History Part 2. We really hope that you liked that video, and if you did, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that bell button to help us out. And we'll see you next time for Godzilla Full History Part 3. Thanks for watching, I'll see you then.